the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold sits up.
I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
This is The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast starring Renny D and friends. Thanks for listening to The Pencil. Subscribe to the show on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
It's Tuesday. It's episode 15. It's Dirt. It's Renny. It's The Pencil. It's the professional wrestling podcast on the internet. You can get us, as always, on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. Dirt, we're coming off Monday Night Raw, the go-home show to Survivor Series. Your initial reaction to last night's show?
I think the WWE went home a week early because whatever we watched last night was about the D-plus effort of creative and everybody that was on the screen. And here at the Pencil Podcast, none of our listeners have to worry about us bringing the D-plus product to the table because it's going to be A-plus every week, this week included. So even though they took off last night, we will not take off tonight.
God damn, it was awful, wasn't it? I mean, it was one of the worst shows that I've seen in a long time going into a pay-per-view. But the positive that I take away from it is they built the shit out of the main event for Survivor Series. Like, literally, it seemed like 3 hours of Raw concentrated on the main event, Team Cena versus Team Authority, and every other match and every other character and every other wrestler involved with Survivor Series was an afterthought. I was going to ask you that right away. I'm glad we got to it right away. How long do you think this main event is going to be? Because there's no way that they can cover. They couldn't get 2 hours of shit in a Survivor Series, I don't think, from what they've built on the other things. So this main event's going to be 70 minutes long. I don't even know. I'm not sure, man. We got 5 confirmed matches and main events going on right now as we tape this, so maybe we'll get one more match. I got the listings posted up on pencilpodcast.com. Obviously, we're going to have our predictions here before the end of this show. But you're right, man. I mean, you got a traditional 5-on-5 Survivor Series match coming up at Survivor Series. I don't know how much time they can fill. They probably could fill a good 45 minutes with that and with every little angle that they could potentially place within the main event. But the 4 other matches on the card, they're not going to eat up a ton of time. From on paper, you wouldn't think so, but
they're awful, and they're all awful. Like, they're not good matches. They're nothing that even the Ambrose Wyatt feud has somehow not even been interesting, which I find it hard to believe. 4 weeks after both of them were so hot that now I could care less about that match. So even if they try to cover 2 hours with those five or six matches other than the main event, it's all going to suck. So they might as well have the main event go the whole goddamn show.
Yeah, I'm thinking, looking at the show on paper, Ambrose and Wyatt will probably get a good 15, 20 minutes in. You got Nikki Bella and AJ Lee. They'll probably get 10, 12 minutes in. But then you got 2 other matches that are probably going to eat up some time. Just signed today was a traditional elimination Divas match. Whether you're in that or into that or not, it's 4-on-4. It's not a 5-on-5 Divas match, but it's a 4 versus 4. That's going to eat up some time. And then obviously the 4-way tag team championship title match. That'll eat up some time too. So I mean, the matches that they have are probably going to eat up some time, and I think that they're really giving the ball to that main event, saying, "Hey, guys, I wouldn't doubt it that the main event's got 60 minutes on Sunday. Literally 60 minutes.
I'll have my stopwatch out. I'll have my stopwatch out because I'm interested, and I think that's a really bad thing. If the WWE has somehow over the last month made me open up my idea to the thing I'm most interested about this upcoming pay-per-view is how long the main event is going to be. But that is not what we should be. That's not what we should be focusing on.
I agree. But you got 10 men in this match, and each man's going to get their own theme song and their own entrance. How much time does that eat up right there? 10 minutes right there, I bet you. I mean, that's literally like 7 to 10 minutes of entrances, literally right there. Plus, the promos that they're going to have with Team Authority and Team Cena. They will find a way to fill 2.5 hours at least 2.5 hours for the show, and it's you're right. It's remarkable. I looked at our card when I was updating our website today. I looked at the card for Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell with the pre-show had 8 matches. We got 5 matches for Survivor Series. So it's going to be interesting how they fill the time, unless they, again, like they sign a match here tonight on Main Event, or obviously they got SmackDown on Friday that they could potentially sign a match for that too, which I wouldn't put it past them to put a filler in. I mean, there's talk too about Fandango coming back and having a match on the pre-show, so maybe we'll get a 6th match there. But
I saw that last night. What do you think of that little vignette? I don't even call it a vignette, I guess. It was just a little photo, and they said new and improved Fandango. I wonder what that's going to be. I forgot that he was even in the company.
Yeah, see, that's the big thing. People forgot that half the people are in the company because they're not utilized in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know what new and improved Fandango is. I actually liked the Fandango character initially. When he first came on the scene, I said, this is a good little gimmick change. And I didn't even mind the whole, I guess, him and Summer Rae and Layla with the... I gave him something to do.
Layla or whoever else was in that, yeah.
Yeah, in the love triangle. It gave him something to do. It gave him some screen time. Obviously, Johnny Curtis is a good worker, a good wrestler. I wish he would get some more time to do that. And they were pushing him hard. I mean, you remember the day after WrestleMania 2 years ago, it was the Fandangoing around the world, and it just seemed like Vince got sick of it and tired of it, or Triple H or whoever it might be, and then they just fade him out, and he was on Total Divas a little bit here and there, and then he was gone, kind of like a lot of people are in the WWE. But one person that was...
Yeah,
go ahead.
Johnny Curtis, Fandango does seem like kind of a cool dude. I know you've seen him like off camera a little bit. I believe you met him at the Raw that you were on here a year and a half ago, right?
Awesome.
He seems like a cool dude, and his personality kind of reminds me of that, like the fact that Ryback. Like, people thought Ryback was cool outside the ring. They thought he was funny. He had these cool little videos, and he's had funny tweets, and he's just a cool dude, and he's got the look. And now Ryback's getting the push. I don't know if that can happen with somebody like Fandango, but whenever you're a cool dude, it's going to give you a chance, at least. And he seems like a pretty sweet guy.
Yeah, he was ridiculously awesome, and he probably fucked half the locker room, and that's completely fine in my book because the dude's a decent looking guy, but he's funny, he's a stud. I'll be interested to see what they do with him moving forward, but there's a lot of avenues they can go. But it seems like with the absence of Brock Lesnar, they're really focusing on mid-card talent, and they have too much of it, I think, at this point now. We need to really start separating some of the mid-card up to the higher-end level, but the complaints with Brock Lesnar not being on shows, people are literally forgetting that there's a world title, and I think... Literally, I don't know. I think you need to at least have Paul Heyman, or you need to have something to reiterate the fact that there is a WWE World Heavyweight Champion on these Raws, on these pay-per-views. He goes from SummerSlam...
As much time as they waste on some stuff, it's just they replay so much stuff from SmackDown or from Raw on each show. SmackDown is basically a replay of Raw with replays, and it's dumbfounding to me that they can't just play a replay of like 4 minutes of Lesnar's last match that he played and there's people that have turned on the TV for the last 4 weeks and would not know that Seth Rollins curb stomped Brock Lesnar like 5 weeks ago. And that was the biggest thing in the company. Like, it's unbelievable to me that they've just, it's got to be by design. They have to want people to forget, and then they can just shock him whenever he comes back. I can't imagine that they're dumb enough to just totally disregard it all.
Either they want us to forget so they can shock us, or they actually legitimately think that we're stupid enough not to remember. And one thing that's apparent is the WWE. Remember, what was it? 2 weeks ago, Jack Swagger was apparently on Team Cena, and right, and all of a sudden Jack Swagger got hurt, and he was too injured to be on Team Cena at Survivor Series. Guess who's wrestling a match tonight on Main Event? Jack Swagger is in a match tonight on Main Event. So Jack Swagger is too hurt to be on Team Cena this Sunday. But fuck it, on a Tuesday night taping on the WWE Network for Main Event, he's well enough to go ahead and wrestle Bray Wyatt. So I think they really take they think we're stupid at times, and it's, we know what's going on. Like, okay, so this guy's not well enough to be on Team Cena. Team Cena's got like nobody on his team, but all of a sudden Jack Swagger's back competing on Main Event. I'm not stupid, Vince.
I'm going to go on a limb and say that Sheamus is probably going to be able to wrestle the Raw the night after Survivor Series.
What is that about? I mean, honestly, like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, Sheamus is one of the biggest. He literally was just the U.S. champion, and he's not going to have a match at Survivor Series. I don't understand why? I mean, he should be on the card some way, I would think. But hey, what do I know? What they're maybe he's hurt. I don't know what he's doing. But let's hop back to Raw real quick. And obviously, my biggest takeaway was, yeah, they built up the main event. Everything else seemed like an afterthought. Everything else in the show sucked, in my opinion. Two things stood out to me on Raw. One, obviously, was your boy Dolph dropping the Intercontinental title in a shocking turn of events to Luke Harper. I was shocked. I didn't think. I mean, these are things that really, I guess, shock us as fans, but it also will go ahead and put the rocket on Luke Harper and catapult him up into basically superstardom, because we don't have a world heavyweight champion at this point. So the IC title is arguably the most important title on Raw and SmackDown, and now Luke Harper holds the Intercontinental title, and Dolph Ziggler no longer does. What, at that point, when you saw that happen, this is how Raw started, so I just assumed, yeah, this is going to be a great go-home Raw, and then it took a shit after that until basically the end.
Yeah, I really liked it. I wrote about some of the big guys in WWE on one of my articles on pencilpodcast.com here last month, about a handful of them. I mean, you got Mark Henry, you got Big Show, you got Eric Rowan, you got Luke Harper. Even Ryback can be in that mix at times as one of the bigger guys, like the big guy that can just be in a match because he's big. I think Luke Harper is the best worker of any of those guys. I think he's just really good in the ring, and I think I don't know what depth they're going to add to his character, but I was completely fine with him taking it off of Dolph, even though obviously I am a Dolph guy. I've also explained that he's awesome. Like, just like with women, the chase is what gets Dolph so good. You don't want to have the title. You don't want to have the girl. You don't want to have the title. The chase is what does it for us. It does it for me. It does it for you. It does it for Dolph. It does it whenever we're watching him on Monday nights. I'm okay with him not having the title. We'll see where they go with him from this point. I know you have a couple ideas, and I love one of them, but I was fine with Luke Harper winning it. I think he'll be an entertaining character from this point forward. I don't know how long he'll hold it, but that part of Raw was definitely a plus, one of the few from last night.
Yeah, it was some life into the show that otherwise was a D+, if that, like you mentioned. So we talked about Luke Harper winning the Intercontinental title. I guess the other turn of events then was, at the end of the show, is one of the members of Team Cena. I tweeted early at like 7:07. I said, what if Eric Rowan is the fifth member of Team Cena? Hashtag not going to happen. Like, I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't get any inside information from Eric Rowan. I didn't text him beforehand. I had no idea. And when he came out at the end, you texted me right away and said, it's your boy. And I guess if you're going to do something with the Wyatt family, you got two of them in the main event at Survivor Series, and the other one is in arguably the second most important match on the card. I guess I don't know if this is the plan all along, and I'm stunned.
No way. I'm not giving them that credit. This has not been the plan. There's no way they had that foresight.
So when do you think they changed their mind? When do you think that they came to fruition on this plan?
I honestly, part of me earlier today, I don't want to believe that Sheamus is actually hurt, or that there's something going, like, with having that open spot. I think there's a chance that during the show last night that was decided. Something happened during those 3 hours of live Raw that said, who the hell are we going to throw in here? It felt like that to me, because he doesn't belong, I don't think. It only belongs because Harper is there. And I'm surprised how big of a reaction they get when they're in the ring together. It's pretty entertaining, and maybe it'll work. But when I heard his music, I was like, oh, really? Like, Cesaro, I thought made sense. That was a cool little swerve, I thought, that they brought him out and then moved him to the authority side. Probably sucks for him because he's a complete afterthought, and he's probably one of the top 3 wrestlers in the company, and now he's got nothing to do. But I don't know. Maybe Sheamus actually got hurt, and they just went backstage and picked the first guy they saw and thought, hey, we could probably make this up to enter into a storyline. Rowan, go out there.
Well, two things I take away from that. Obviously, one on the Cesaro situation. He loses more than any wrestler on that roster, but with that being said, he looks great, and he's always getting TV time. And if you're in the WWE and you want to be relevant, you make sure your ass is on every taping of Raw, every taping of Main Event, and every taping of SmackDown. He's on every single fucking show. So he can lose every match. If he's getting that TV time, you know that they have merit in him. I mean, they know that he makes other people look good. And
everybody, and anybody on the internet or anybody listening to this podcast that says, "Oh, Cesaro gets shit on," 3 months ago, Curtis Axel and Ryback were fucking jobbing to like the Los Matadors twice a week. So don't worry about Cesaro. He's going to be fine. He will be in the main event picture. Ryback's there now, and if I would have told you 4 months ago, everyone would have laughed. They're going to pretend that we all forget this in 3 months, and Cesaro will be a serious player on the road to WrestleMania. You heard it here.
Yeah. He'll be a name in the Royal Rumble to really watch out for, I would think, and I think that they should do that, tease him to go over in the Rumble. But the second takeaway I guess I have then from that situation is can you imagine the pop on Sunday when the tags happen and it's Luke Harper across the ring from Eric Rowan? The crowd's going to eat that shit up. I mean, in St. Louis, they're going to love the fact that two of the former Wyatt family members are going head-to-head in the ring. And they'll work a spot in that match where they both get tagged in. And it's going to be hot. It's going to be similar to the time when we saw the Shield and the Wyatt family basically get up on opposite sides of the apron and stare at each other. People wanted it, and people were anticipating it. I think they might be blowing their load a little bit too soon on this. I wish they would have teased it. I wish they would have built something between the two of them. But whatever. It's the WWE. We can't really expect much more at this point. I think the pop that they're going to get on Sunday is going to be pretty damn good with those guys in the ring at the same time. And I guess what do you think of the teams? Before we get into our predictions for Survivor Series, what do you think of Team Authority and what do you think of Team Cena as far as who's actually on the teams? Obviously, maybe it doesn't make sense who's on there, but are you comfortable with the 5-on-5 teams that they have at this point?
Yeah, I'm fine with who's on them. I just think a little bit about Raw last night. It was just so bad. How somebody backstage was actually writing it and decided that I'm going to give this to a higher ranking individual and that person is also going to think it's a good idea. And then we're going to show it to John Cena and he's going to think it's a good idea for him to go out there and just sound like a fucking idiot in the main event. Like at the end of Raw, sitting down, making jokes, the same stupid jokes that aren't funny about Mark Henry and he's sexual chocolate and he's going to do this and it's just go down the line and just belittle every guy that's in the main event. I just don't understand who backstage thinks it's a good idea, and then somebody else can sign off on it and be like, yeah, people will really like this. It just makes him look stupid. And I wrote our article last week on the pencilpodcast.com. I can't see any situation that Team Cena wins. And when I feel like the Authority has to win because nothing else makes sense, I'm not as interested in the main event, it doesn't sound like, as what you are, because the teams are fine. There's 10 guys and it'll be a shit fest for 45 minutes, but I just feel like it's lost its luster, I think. If we can fucking hear some voices in St. Louis, it'll bring me back if we can get that Orton music hitting.
That's what I thought was going to happen on Raw. I thought when he took a seat on that chair, I thought I Hear Voices would hit, and then Randy Orton would be the member to come out from behind him and RKO the shit out of everybody in the ring to really sell the show. And by sell, it's a quote because it's free on Sunday. With that being said, with it being a free show, Jesus Christ, you would think that they would really make this Survivor Series be just over the top awesome. And the commentaries last night kept saying it's the biggest Survivor Series in the history of our... Don't fucking treat us like we're children. We know that it's not the biggest Survivor Series in the history of the company. I've watched Survivor Series since I was a kid. This is definitely the furthest thing from the biggest one of all time. Just because we have a Team Authority could lose power, it's just they really question our intelligence as fans, and it pisses me off because I know that you and I are smarter than a lot of people when it comes to this because we really look into wrestling at a different angle. But even the casual everyday person that flips through the channels and sees something knows what's going on. We're not stupid to the fact on what's real and what's not. I guess the reason why I'm so into the main event is because every other match doesn't mean much at all to me. So that's why most of my emotional, emotional alliance lies in the main event. If there was another match in the card where there was build, if that Wyatt match had some build to it, then maybe that might be like Hell in a Cell, for instance. I thought the main event should have been Orton Cena, and I was emotionally invested in Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. There was other matches that I was emotionally invested in. I'm not sold on absolutely anything on the card on Sunday, and I really think that the Nikki Bella AJ Lee match could be really good, but it didn't feel that the build there was as well as they could have done either.
No, it was something. It really does feel like 4 weeks ago when we had the conversation about what was going to happen leading up to Survivor Series. our expectations were very, very high, and it feels like from that day forward, somebody very important must have just taken a month off backstage, because it's taken such a turn for the worse. There is no Randy Orton. I know he has to be gone for whatever he's gone for, but he was the shit for 2 weeks leading out of the last pay-per-view, and then it was just, he's hurt, he's gone. If he doesn't come back, I don't know how they're going to save the show.
I mean, I have an idea, and we're going to get into it here. So let's start with our predictions. It's our monthly, or our monthly predictions. It's 2-1 Dirt so far, dating back to SummerSlam in August since we started this podcast. Dirt, I have the card here in front of me. I'll run down it. We'll pick our favorites. We'll pick what we think is going to go on here. And, just for the sake of everything here, if there's a certain something that you think is going to stick out in that match, feel free to give it to me as well. So the match that I was signed here tonight is a 4-on-4 Divas match. Basically, it's going to be Natalya, Alicia Fox, Naomi, and Emma versus Paige, Cameron, Summer Rae, and Layla. I guess I'll pick it first. I think the team of Paige, Cameron, Summer Rae, and Layla is probably going to win it, just because I think Paige is in the forefront at this point. And to be honest with you, I don't really give a shit, but that's who I'm picking for this match.
I'll say that the team that has Natalya on it, I forgot the other three chicks that you just said were on her team, but the team that has Natalya on it will win, and she will make somebody tap out with the sharpshooter. So okay. we got a difference of opinion there. Neither of us care.
This is an elimination style match too, so everybody has to be eliminated. So right there, they're going to eat up 30 minutes in a match that people probably don't give too much about. So they're figuring out a way to eat time, and that's one way to do it. Let's stick on the chicks right away here, huh? Let's go to the Divas Championship match. AJ Lee and Nikki Bella. Who you got?
Nikki Bella will go over and have the title, and then come Monday, I believe that Monday is the last day that Brie has to be her personal attendant, because I think they have 8 days left. So after this pay-per-view, that won't happen. So then we'll be able to look at a Brie Bella versus Nikki Bella situation for the belt, because she won't have to be her personal attendant anymore. I'm with you
on that one. I think that's the direction. Excuse me, the direction they have to go. AJ Lee's kind of a flat tire now at this point. So Nikki Bella over with the Rack Attack, baby, and then Brie Bella, Nikki Bella payoff match at either TLC or Royal Rumble for the title.
The Rack Attack's kind of a cool move, by the way.
It's a cool move, and it's a great name for her. It fits.
Yeah, it is.
It's perfect. So then we got the big 4-way WWE Tag Team Championship match. So the champions, the Dust Brothers, defending against the Usos, Los Matadores, and Miz and Mizdow. I don't think Los Matadores stand a chance in this one. I think, I'm looking at this match and I'm thinking Mizdow could win, but then they have to go into a program with each other the same way the Dust Brothers have to go into a program with each other. So I am going to go on a limb and say the Dust Brothers do retain the titles, because I think after this they'll do their breakup thing, but I think Miz and Mizdow also have a breakup coming here in the future as well.
I got Mizdow and I have Miz and the Mizdow, however you want to say them. That team, that's the one that I have winning. And I think they'll win. I think they'll win, and it'll be entertaining as hell whenever they come out and with their belts on Monday. That'll set up a rematch with the Dust Bros probably at TLC, and whenever the Dust Brothers lose a rematch, that is when the fraction will start. I think it'll wait a little after losing the belts. So if they win a Survivor Series and they had to hold them until the next pay-per-view, I think that would hurt them breaking up. So for 2 different reasons, I will take Mizdow.
All right, and that's the only other team that I think has a chance to win that match. And if it happens, then I know exactly. I'm with you on that one. But Dean Ambrose, Bray Wyatt, in just a grudge match for absolutely nothing, makes no sense. Whatever. It literally is. It's just stupid, and it's they interrupt the main event of Hell in a Cell, and then there's just barely any build. And
4 weeks have gone by, and I don't know why they're fighting, and I don't know why Bray Wyatt took him out.
It's just his dad's in prison, bro. Apparently, you take out kids, his dads are in prison. I guess I don't know. It's fucking stupid. But I got Bray Wyatt in this one. I just don't see any reason why Dean Ambrose would go over. They have no direction for either characters. I'm taking Bray Wyatt.
I'm taking Dean Ambrose for the same reason. I don't know why. I don't know what either of them gains or loses from beating each other, but I'm going to say Dean Ambrose wins. Hopefully it's a good match. That'll at least save the feud so that we remember the match instead of how bad the build-up was. But if the
it's
match
not going to be a
is
wrestling
anything...
match. It's not going to be a wrestling match. They're going to beat the hell out of each other, right? Dean Ambrose is pissed off. He's getting made fun of. His dad's in prison. He's going to come in swinging. I just don't even see this being a wrestling match. I just see this being like a false, eventually it might be a false count anywhere match or something they might make on SmackDown. You know, that's
I'm sure it'll be a no disqualification match because that'll be great. But one way or another, I'm going to say Dean Ambrose wins because if there's anything we know about Bray Wyatt's character is that all he wants to do is, apparently, he wants to try to have people follow him, which he has succeeded exactly 0 times in the past 18 months of making anyone follow him. So at some point, that idea is getting a little lame. But I will say he doesn't care about winning and losing. Dean Ambrose can at least gain a little more than what Wyatt probably can from a win, so I'll take Dean Ambrose.
All right, man. We'll see. And that brings us to our main event and the last prediction here of the night before we wrap it up. Team Authority, Team Cena. You wrote an article on pencilpodcast.com with basically your prediction already, or at least what you think is right. You sticking with that?
I have not changed my mind whatsoever. My Pencil Podcast article stated how I believe the match will end, and last night's ending of Raw made me believe that I was right, and that I think Team Authority will win. The last 2 standing will be Seth Rollins and John Cena, and the way it will end is Triple H will be sitting in his chair like normal, like John Cena was making fun of him last night. He'll be watching the match. Something will happen. The ref will get knocked away. Something stupid will go on. Triple H will drop Cena either with a chair shot or a pedigree outside the ring, roll him into the ring for a curb stomp and pin 1, 2, 3, Mr. Money in the Bank. For everyone who forgot, Seth Rollins is Mr. Money in the Bank. I know I almost did, but he'll get the pin. Team Authority will go over.
I got Team Authority going over as well, and for a long time I had Randy Orton coming back, but I told you this is my theory. I think that with Dolph dropping the title on Monday, his direction of a character right now is a little bit in limbo. I think Dolph turns heel on Sunday. It's down to Dolph and John Cena versus Seth Rollins, and I think Dolph turns on Cena, walking out, causing Cena to basically get pinned, or, maybe Dolph's already out of the match at this point, but Dolph turns on Cena, quote unquote, turning heel. But the more I think about it, though, it does kind of scare me if he does do that, because with Cena's, reaction he gets from people in the crowd, I'm not really sure how it goes over, but that's my prediction. The only other thing I could think of is...
I love it. I love the idea. I never thought of it until you brought it up last night. I love that idea because, like you said, if there's anybody to turn heel against and get cheered, it's Cena. And Dolph is that kind of guy. He's almost in that little CM Punk range of whether he's heel or face, he's going to get cheered. And if he takes out Cena and makes him lose, I think that's a great move. I wouldn't mind seeing that as long as the Authority wins.
Yeah, and I think with the way the Raw ended with Ryback and Triple H staring at each other, there potentially could be something there, and there also could be some potential to Sheamus not being on the card. Maybe Sheamus comes back and Sheamus actually turns heel because Cena didn't have his back on Raw. Those are different things that I've heard. I'm sticking with Dolph Ziggler turning heel. By the way, before we shut down this first part of the podcast and bring in Carmine, who won that match between Big Show and Sheamus on Monday?
I believe what they actually said, which was interesting to me as well. They called it a no contest, no finish, which I believe is completely inaccurate because Sheamus should have won that match via disqualification because Rusev hit him before, or Mark Henry hit him before anybody touched the Big Show. So by
and
rule,
that was for a world title match too. So it was
just a waste. It was a waste of time. Why Stephanie came out and said what she said, and then anybody that actually watches the show with any sort of intelligence knows that Sheamus won the match by disqualification, so he there should be in line for a title shot. There's no way they're going to believe that they're going to bring that back into a storyline later because that's just too much stuff to try to think that people would understand. But yeah, for people like you and me, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was stupid. It was dumb, man. We got Sunday. We got the pay-per-view. Hopefully they deliver. It's free for Christ's sake. So for the people tuning in for the first time, give them something so they buy it for the next month. I wrote an article on pencilpodcast.com about having a cliffhanger with Triple H maybe potentially wrestling in the future. The way that looks is it's not going to happen. But, again, I picked Dolph Ziggler turning heel. Hopefully that sparks some interest back into the product. Couple of things real quick before we wrap this up. We are having Lance Hoyt back on the episode, or Lance Archer. He's going to come and talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling. We never got to that when we had him on the phone, Dirt. We talked more about his TNA and WWE days, but New Japan Pro Wrestling is blowing up. It just teamed up with Global Force Wrestling to basically promote its big January 4th Wrestle Kingdom 9 Tokyo Dome show here in the United States. It's the first time ever. He's coming on. He'll be on December 30th, the Tuesday before the big January 4th show, to talk about it. It's going to be cool, man. There's a lot of buzz around this, and there's a lot of buzz around the product. Jim Ross is calling this show over in Japan. It's going to be awesome. A couple other guests we have coming up is David Hero from Pro Wrestling Report. We also have Justin LeBar from WrestleZone.com, also used to write for Bleacher Report, a pro wrestler by the name of Dysfunction, and then Mick Karch, who has actually offered the role of Joey Styles in ECW, but turned it down. Also offered a couple of roles with WCW and WWE, but turned them down as well. So we got some sweet guests coming up. A lot of stuff going on. I will post our predictions to pencilpodcast.com here tonight, and maybe I'll have another bottle of Southern Comfort coming after Sunday. I can only hope, because more of that for me to drink on the rocks, to watch some of these badass Raws, and by badass I mean fucking terrible, the better in my book, man. I don't know. I hope they hit out of the park on Sunday, man. I hope they do for our sake, because we signed up to cover this on a regular basis, so they need to start making us a little bit more happy.
I agree. I got my glass half full. I'm going to believe that it'll get me through. And if it sucks, just keep in mind, it's already November. We're getting real close to where we want to be. It's
getting close. And if you don't like it, go out and buy WWE 2K15 for Xbox One or PS4. I wish I could. I could play it and create my own superstar. But until then, do us a favor. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Real Renny D. Travis is at Travis Mester. Or follow the show at Pencil Podcast. We're available online, pencilpodcast.com, and this is a fan-supported podcast, so subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. We're also on YouTube, PodBean, Stitcher Radio. Dirt, we're going to come at these guys next Tuesday with a new episode with you and I, but we also have another episode here this week on Thursday with the part 2 of Carmine. And with that being said, Dirt, you have a good rest of the week. We will chat, obviously, more about WWE during the week. pencilpodcast.com. We're going to say goodbye for Tuesday. Make sure to keep in mind that we'll be back on Thursday.
You've been listening to another great episode of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast coming straight at you every Tuesday on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. But hang around. We got a lot more to come, because up next is the guest of the evening. We dive right into the world of professional wrestling, asking all the questions that you want answers to. Up next. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of The Pencil. It's the professional wrestling podcast online. Up next is my guest this week. It's Carmine DeSpirito, and this is going to be part 1 of 2, and part 2 will drop on Thursday. Carmine is an East Coast-born Italian man who loves the sport of professional wrestling. He got involved in wrestling very similar to the way Paul Heyman got involved in professional wrestling, and that was shooting photos for a specific wrestling magazine that actually was a direct competitor of Paul Heyman. Carmine spent much of his youth and much of his early adulthood in New Jersey and on the East Coast working the territorial system. Eventually got a job as being one of the bigger heel managers in professional wrestling, managing around the country on the East Coast as well as across seas in the UK and Europe. In part 1, Carmine's going to talk about the early days in pro wrestling, what the tensions were between the territorial systems, and the difference between what we saw back then compared to what we see today, as far as talking about the suspense of belief in the WWE and what he thinks happens to professional wrestling as soon as New Japan Pro Wrestling's January 4th Wrestle Kingdom 9 show comes to the United States. And as I mentioned, part 2 will drop this Thursday on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. And that at that point, Carmine will hop into what it was like booking and promoting a territory for Mid-American Wrestling in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, booking talents such as Colt Cabana, Adam Pearce, Kamikaze Ken Anderson, Austin Aries, and a man you may have heard of called CM Punk. We got a great time with Carmine, and it is a long portion, but it was too good to cut him off, so that's why we have 2 special episodes here this week. As always, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or however you may get your podcast. We appreciate you tuning in, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Cool, so tell me about, now obviously your name popped up, I've known you for a long time. but your name popped up on a recent podcast with Chris Jericho, which I'm sure you've either heard about or
yeah, I
listened
did.
to.
Yep.
Which was funny. I was listening to it. I was in the gym. I was like, whoa, this is something I didn't know. So bring me back to Carmine early days in professional wrestling.
Well, yeah, I was a photographer back in the day. So was Paul Heyman.
Right.
Heyman was in the business a bit longer than I was, probably 2 years maybe, and he was a photographer too. And I guess everybody's seen the photos of him, like with the Grand Wizard and Blassie and stuff at the Garden. He was a longtime fan. I'm a few years younger than Paul. Paul was a photographer. And I knew him because I was also a photographer. And sometime I became the editor of Wrestling Eye magazine. And by coincidence, Paul was also a manager of a wrestling magazine as well.
A competitive magazine compared to yours, or would you guys kind of use
I think
stories?
We were competitors. It was New Wave. I think it was New Wave Wrestling. I could be wrong. I don't remember the name of it. He probably doesn't either. But we were friends. I guess you would say that. I still like the guy a great deal. I think Heyman has done so much for the business. He knows what the fans want to see, and that's the most important thing as a booker. You don't necessarily promote what you want to see as a booker. You need to promote what your fans want to see, and to understand your market, understand your audience. And definitely, Heyman is one of the best at it.
Sure.
Without a doubt. So I was the editor of a magazine, and
How'd you hear that, though, Carmine?
How'd you become a manager? What's that?
How'd you get into wrestling and being a photographer? Like, were you involved in wrestling, or were you loved wrestling at an early age? And this is something
I
like,
was just
boom.
a fan. I was a senior in high school, and I sent some photos out to Wrestling Eye magazine, and got them printed. And what happened was the editor, the guy that was in charge of the magazine, he died in a car accident.
Oh, Jesus.
And I ended up getting the slot, and I did that for 7 years. I was the editor of Wrestling Eye magazine.
And you wrote in New York at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was living in Jersey. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perfect. So you did that. You did that for 7 years. Where did that lead you to then after 7 years?
Well, after 7 years, actually probably in a short time after I started the magazine or worked with the magazine, I managed. I guess I took a page out of Heyman's book.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds familiar.
Or tried to, anyway.
Sure.
And I started working indie shows on the East Coast, and I worked with some great stars, some great names, I did a lot of shows with Sergeant Slaughter. He was on just about every fundraiser at every high school you could possibly imagine. Guys like whoever was out there at the time, Bigelow, Orndorff, guys like Iron Mike Sharp. I managed Iron Mike Sharp all the time. I met Dr. D. David Schultz, and also Ted Petty, who was wrestling at the time as the Cheetah Kid, who went on to become Rocco Rock of Public Enemy in ECW. Mm-hmm. Both of those guys, Teddy and David, I consider to be my mentors. The ones that took me under their wing, the ones that tried to help me along. To have David Schultz as your mentor is quite a compliment because he doesn't like many people. He at least was known to have quite the temper. But I always got along with Dr. D. And David Schultz, although he would scare me to death because he is one scary redneck. He is the character of Stone Cold Steve Austin in real life. I don't care how much Steve Austin might believe that in real life he is that character. Dr. D is the real deal. Many have said that, and but David, of course, known for being the only one in our business that lost his career for protecting the business. Because when John Stossel said, I think all this is fake, Schultz smacked him right in the ear. Now, there's, of course, we could do a whole hour about what exactly happened, but what's important is that Schultz defended the business. I don't think Schultz has ever been given the credit that he deserves for defending kayfabe, and at the time, Schultz was one of the biggest stars in the business. He was working with Hogan. That night at the Garden, he was working at Noki, and if it wasn't at the Garden, Schultz would be headlining a card in Japan against Inoki. This guy was a huge star, and because he protected the business, he really lost his career.
That's so weird. Obviously, fast forward many years when I broke into the business, I was scared shitless of not defending the business. I thought if I didn't, I messed up, somebody like Rashi Brown in your locker room would beat the living hell out of me. So, that's remarkable to hear that.
Probably still would.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm still scared shitless of Rashi to this day. But yeah, that's remarkable that something like that would happen back then. Was there a territorial system that you worked with Carmine on a consistent basis when you broke in as a manager then?
No, I did all of the original Northeast Indies.
Okay.
Way before there was ECW, 1987, 88, 89. That's when I worked on the East Coast. I did a lot of shows in New England, fairs and so on. I worked with Johnny Rod's wrestlers. I worked with another guy by the name of Bobby Bold Eagle. And Bobby trained at Gleason's gym, and he trained a lot of guys. And I'll tell you one guy that he trained. Well, his most renowned student would probably be Chris Canyon.
Okay.
Separate from that, Bobby had his hands in training Ted Petty. Teddy was also, by the way, one of the only trainees of Buddy Rogers. Many people know that. Bobby also trained Cactus Jack. Now, of course, Mick Foley was trained by Dominic DeNucci in Pittsburgh. But after he broke into business and after a year or so, he wanted to expand his repertoire. And, there weren't a lot of guys out there that flew around in the ring that did, planches and topes and things like that. Well, Bobby wrestled in Japan. He worked with Tiger Mask, who was known as Sammy Lee at the time. He worked with Mark Rollerball Rocco in England. He worked in Mexico. Bobby got around the world and did a lot of different stuff. In fact, Bobby used to claim that the famous Tiger Mask used to do a move when he used to fake out his opponents. When the other wrestler would go to the outside, it was expected for Tiger Mask, the people think he's going to jump over the top rope with a cross body. But instead, he would hook onto the top rope and the second rope and spin from the inside of the ring to the outside of the ring and back in to tease the move. Well, Bobby claimed that he taught Tiger Mask that. He was in England at the same time as Tiger Mask. Tiger Mask was known as Sammy Lee back then. So could very well be. But my point is that Bobby had his hand in training Mick Foley, and a lot of other guys. A lot of other guys would stop by Bobby when they wanted to learn something out of the norm, And back then, wrestling was really quite different than today. I mean, kids see all these high spots, and there's a way to do them. Well-known technique to do certain things. Back then, really, there weren't many that were privy to that knowledge back then. So, yeah.
Yeah, back then, even I remember when I first broke in, one of the first tapes I bought was an old AWA tape, and you didn't see any pretty much high-flying moves at that point. And nowadays, if you don't see one in the eyes of the fan, it's almost a disappointment, which is kind of sad because I didn't do a ton until I was forced to do it. But now if you turn on Dragon Gate or a PWG pay-per-view, that's primarily all you see, it seems like. So it's very interesting to compare 2014 to 1989. And one thing I had a question on, what were you guys drawing back in 89, 90 for crowd sizes? Because now, 200-300 people at some of these shows is considered a success. But I've seen cards back in the day where they would sell out buildings getting 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people at some of these indie shows. What were you guys drawing on a typical nightly basis?
Well, for the most part, many of the shows that were done were fundraisers. Like there were fundraisers for high schools, or there were sold shows to fairs. There were very few actual house shows where the promoter booked the building and, promoted the show himself. There were very few of those. There weren't many. There really weren't. The shows, everything that I did back then in the day, there were decent crowds for the most part. Yeah. Who really broke the barrier there? The pioneer is Joel Goodhart, who ran Tri-States Wrestling in Philadelphia. He was the precursor to ECW. And I don't think anybody has duplicated what Joel Goodhart has done. I don't think Joel gets enough credit. Those shows stand up to the test of time. Funk against Lawler, Abby against the Sheik, Eddie Gilbert against Cactus Jack, all on one card. Plus more legends. He brought in names, and I knew Joel really well. And we talk, and I go, does Adrian Street mean anything here in Philadelphia? He's never worked here. I don't think he's ever been on TV. He said, yeah, but he'll be great for the show. And, of course, he was right, but a different outlook on things. Dennis Coraluzzo was a promoter like that, too, where he brought in guys that maybe not necessarily were going to be a huge draw, but he felt that they would get attention after the people saw them, and also because those wrestlers that didn't normally wrestle in the area, when he would bring in, like for example, Terry Funk, there were a lot of wrestling fans, hardcore, die-hard wrestling fans that, really wanted to see Terry, for example, or Tommy Rich, or Dick Slater, or what have you. So, yeah. Those guys were the pioneers. I don't think they get enough credit. Heyman, when he started ECW, he promoted with Todd Gordon, of course, and Todd was also Joel Goodhart's, I believe, his backer at the time. Paul really piggybacked that success, I feel, at least in the beginning when it was Eastern Championship Wrestling. He was using a lot of the same guys, the Sandman, Rockin' Rebel, and so on, much like Joel Goodhart did. So those are very, very good shows. Those early ECW shows are great. The Tri-State Wrestling shows, I think, are great, especially, for any ECW fan. They should get the DVDs of that stuff. I'm pretty sure RF Video carries them. It's really some great shows.
Yeah, because WWE only owns the ECW library. They don't own any of the Tri-State stuff at all, correct? So RF Video would have most of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, was there any animosity between territories back then as far as, main competition between the Northeastern independents compared to Mid-South? Or
you had the only type of competition you probably had was in respect to selling shows. In other words, let's say, and this is just for the sake of conversation, let's say Afa the Wild Samoan, who he ran a lot of shows at the time. Let's say he ran a county fair. Well, then let's say another promoter comes in the following year and takes the fair from him. That's probably the only competition you would have in regards to independence in that part of the country at the time. Really something like that. Other than that, not really. There were guys that did promote their own shows, normally associated with wrestling schools, where Johnny Rods in Brooklyn ran wrestling shows, monthly shows at Gleason's Arena. And then Larry Sharp, he would do shows with his guys as well, the guys out of the school. But other than that, everything was pretty much a sold show back in the day.
like now, I know when I left Minneapolis, there were 8 quote-unquote promotions running in just the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Was that ever an issue?
No, and I'll tell you why. It's because there was a state athletic commission in New York and Jersey and Pennsylvania. It wasn't easy to promote. You'd have a license. You couldn't just be an 18-year-old kid that's a wrestling fan and say, I want to be a promoter. And go,
which is the case numerous times.
Go borrow a ring and book some guys off of Facebook. No,
right.
It was completely different in that you had to post, I believe it was a $50,000 bond in the state of New York. You need to have insurance requirements. In New York State, very, very strict. You had to pay for a doctor to be there, an ambulance to be there. You needed to have your ticket takers, your referees, ring announcers, timekeeper, all needed licenses. It costs a lot of money to run a wrestling show in New York. A lot of requirements. In New Jersey, less strict, but still you had to, you had to find somebody that had a license, and then you would pay them. Then you would promote under them. They would file the show with the commission. You could basically call it anything you wanted. And then the commission would get their money, their tax money. On top of that, though, another expense you would have to pay is that not only do the wrestlers have to be licensed, now many of them would, most of them would have their own license already, like wrestlers from Jersey have a New Jersey license. Right. But every show you'd have to pay insurance per wrestler, which might be something like $27 a guy. Well, when you look at it, you're looking at least spending a few grand, right off the bat before you even book anybody or rent the building or anything. You have a lot of expenses, so that weeded out a lot of guys in these commission states. Now that wrestling is deregulated, you have everybody is in the wrestling business. Everybody can promote a show. And for the most part, indie wrestling has hurt themselves.
Yeah.
They've hurt themselves. The guys that, look, I'm sorry. I really, really support independent wrestling promoters. But how about running some legitimate venues?
I'm with you. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here.
How about trying to get out there and solicit sponsors? How about, setting an advertising campaign for your show? All those things that are just as important as the guys that you book on the show, that are just as important as the show itself and the feuds and all this stuff that you want to do. Well, you know what? There's so much more that indie promoters could be doing. And I asked this the other week on Facebook. I want to see if anybody had an answer for this. Like what we were just talking about. When I broke in the business, every show was practically a fundraiser. There were very few guys that did shows on their own. Why is that? Why are there less fundraisers? Why isn't Ring of Honor doing fundraisers? Why? I don't understand. I understand it is a lot. It's more difficult nowadays. Wrestling does not have the greatest name anymore than what it once did. That can be attributed to many things. It can be contributed to. They say that the business is still feeling the effects of the whole Benoit murder. Still, I don't know. But, there are a lot of things, that wrestling is a tough sell. Yes, I can believe that. But there are also county fairs that have money to spend on entertainment. There are also, high schools and charities that are looking to raise money. And if you don't go out there and you don't try to get it, you're not going to get it. They're not going to come knocking on your door. It'd be great to see indie promoters start working on those things. Try to sell more shows. And that would also support their monthly shows that they do on their own. And, maybe then they would have more money to invest in advertising, maybe get a better building, and so on and so forth,
Yeah, I would say even just in my experience, I haven't been a part of too many charity shows either. It wasn't really I was part of a couple, but they really, you're right, they don't do a lot of charity shows anymore. They don't even do a lot of sold shows as far as fairs or outdoor festivals. It's more or less running a venue once a month, paying that venue X amount of dollars. There's no insurance anymore. I mean, that was out the window many moons ago. And it seems like the promotions that were successful, the ones that I were on, were the ones either booking at good facilities like downtown Minneapolis, or they really put a lot of advertising into the actual show, like an HOW Jerry Lynn's last show, for instance, that I was on.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's you're right, you're absolutely right, and on top of that, the talent that's used, and the problem I see up here is that if you have 8 promotions in the Twin Cities and you have a third Saturday of the month and there's 3 different promotions running on that third Saturday, well, the talent pool of Minnesota is only so big. And you're gonna book who you book. So it's a struggle, and it's the deregulation, which I think is a good thing. But at the same time, playing dress up, trying to play promoter, has been hurting the business, not just in the Midwest, but I think pretty much anywhere.
There are some great promoters. In fact, one of the best promoters is right there in Minnesota. Ed Hellier does a heck of a job.
Yeah, for Steel Domain. I've worked for Ed numerous times. He's great guy. Doesn't run a lot of shows, but when he runs shows, he tries to put in as much effort as possible to make sure.
He is a promoter.
Right.
And, there are a lot of guys out there that are doing a fine job, One thing that is prevalent nowadays is that a lot of wrestling promoters don't even know where to get liability insurance. And when you run a legitimate venue, you have to get spectator liability insurance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys don't have that. If it was a commission state, you would be required to have it. Like, for example, here in Oklahoma, I have to have all that. I have to have a license through the state. The wrestlers have to be licensed, which also means that the wrestlers have to pass a physical, EKG, blood work. I mean, and these things to me are necessary. I mean, who's to say who you're wrestling doesn't have hepatitis?
Yeah.
Or, God forbid, something worse.
Right.
Especially on the indie scene. I mean, in New York, the boys are tested, but you don't know. I mean, it's for the safety of the wrestlers, too. I think that if indie promoters out there, I think that they can rise above the guys that aren't serious. I think that they can be more successful than they ever dreamed of if they had a different mindset about it. If instead of maybe running every month, hey, let's run every other month, and maybe we can draw more people that way, I mean, the more in the wrestling business, the more people that you draw, the more credibility you get. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you say?
And it's more fun for us as wrestlers as well. So
exactly, it's more fun. It's more fun as well. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of room for improvement out there on the independent wrestling scene. I'm looking forward to getting back into it, and I'm going to get back into it here in Oklahoma City. But maybe I'm jumping ahead, Ryan.
Well, let's take you from the East Coast, and let's put you in Milwaukee. Let's put you at Mid-American Wrestling.
Before that, let me say this: I was before I went to Milwaukee. I was managing quite a bit, and I managed a lot of guys: David Schultz, Iron Sheik, even Fabulous Moolah. I love working with the girls, by the way; they're so much fun. And worked with a lot of legends. I was able to get booked overseas. In fact, Ted Petty got me booked on a tour. It was a one-shot deal. It wasn't really a tour. It was in Athens, Greece, and I managed Abdullah the Butcher against Jules Strongbow in Athens, Greece. And that was my first overseas trip. And what an experience. What an experience working with Abby. What an experience, almost starting a riot. Abby left Jules just a bloody mess in the ring, and the people were pissed off. And this is a pretty big building. It was an Olympic building. It kind of looked like the Saddle Dome in Calgary. And after the match, I get back to the locker room, and Abby says, "Where's my belt?" And I said, "I must still be at the ring. Go get my belt." So, of course, I go out to the ring to get Abby's belt. And the people were still buzzing. And I walk out to the ring in gimmick, and grab the belt from the ringside table, and I said, "Well, shit, I gotta work this." So I raised the belt up, and I could see the people are really going crazy now. And they started, a few of them I could catch out of the corner of my eye. They're getting up and they're running to the ring, to the barricade. So I learned from the old timers, never run. If you run, they'll run after you even faster. So don't run. And and I didn't want to have a blind spot. I remembered how to always keep your elbows tucked into your body, so in case you get stabbed, it won't hit a vital organ.
It's great. It's
Paul
great that you know
I think Dr. D told me that. And actually, I had to use that advice a couple times in Europe. But I'm backing down the aisle, and I see them. They're climbing over the barricade, and I see a cop hit a fan with a billy club. And it was wild. And I back up through this huge iron gate, and it closes. A huge iron gate, and boom, and they close together. Like, oh my God, I almost got killed. And I walk back, and he goes, "Did you get my belt?" "Yeah, I got your belt." I didn't even bother to tell him what just happened. I didn't even bother. Just because. But anyway, I had some great experiences. I worked with managed Hercules against the Ultimate Warrior throughout Germany and Austria. Huge tour. Warrior got the most money of anybody for an independent tour. I believe it was $100,000 a week he was given at the time. But sold out everywhere. The night of the tour, the last night of the tour in Vienna, Austria, Warrior was crossed with the American promoters that booked the tour. That night, Warrior held up the show, and us boys were pissed off. Like, let's get this over with. There's gonna be a damn riot. Sold out the Stadthalle in Vienna, and it's 6,500, I believe. I worked that building 3 times, and the place that they were going crazy. I mean, they're waiting for the wrestling show to start. It took an hour and a half for the show to start because Warrior wanted an extra, I believe it was $30,000 from the promoter.
Oh boy, this
and
seems
we
like
were just like, come on, this guy didn't make enough money, He's getting another $30,000. Like, what the hell? Well, he got it for the boys. He didn't keep it. He invited everybody into a room, all the top guys. They got, I'm sure more than my jabroni ass got. I got an extra $1,000. Myself and Johnny Grunge, I got a picture of us together with our $1,000. We were so happy because, we've spent that was the last day of the tour, and now we can finally go home with something because we partied with the rest of the money that we made.
Why not?
So, yeah. So, and people ask me about Warrior, and I liked him. I thought he was a hell of a guy. he gained a reputation of being not so great of a guy, of being crazy and all these different things. I'll tell you what, he was great to work with. Never talked down to me or treated me like a jabroni or anything like that, and certainly he could have. He was the warrior, you know. I learned a lot. I actually learned things working with him and working with Hercules Hernandez too. I learned a lot. That was a great time, a great tour, and I was fortunate enough to go overseas many times. I worked for some German promoters. On one trip, I brought Hardcore Craig over. He's a local Midwest star from Chicago. I brought him over to work with Dynamite Kid in Hanover, Germany. I got another story connected with that. During the match, Craig ends up getting hurt. Now, actually, to preface that, Dynamite Kid at the time had a really bad back and really torn up and should not be wrestling. Doctors told him if he took one bad bump, he'd be crippled for life.
And what year was this, Carmen?
This is 1995, I want to say.
Okay.
95. And during the match, what he would do is that he would tell his opponent to mare him down, and as he was sitting with his ass on the mat, he'd bang his heel against the mat to uncurl his toes. Because of his back problems, the nerves would cause his toes to curl under his foot, and he couldn't stand. That's how bad a shape he was in.
That's
so
terrible, yeah.
He's wrestling Craig, and there was nothing that Dynamite would not do. Nothing. Dynamite pulled me aside. He said, "You know, Mike," he says, "this kid reminds me of myself when I was his age." And it was, you know, what a great compliment. And during the match, I started saying, Craig took a bump to the outside, and the ring was, I'd say 4 feet off the ground. The apron was about 4 feet off the ground. So when he took the bump, he reached with one leg to reach the floor. Well, there was no floor. And he ended up tearing his hamstring. And the referee's making the count, and he's not getting up. Well, I had to help him up. Got him up. I stalled a little bit. Dynamite, I got up on the apron. Dynamite gave me a headbutt. He snap suplexed Craig into the ring, and the match was over. But another thing, Dynamite Kid. Everybody's heard so many stories about him. They've said that, you know, he's crazy, and that is true. Some say that, you know, he's a legendary partier, you know, an outrageous partier. Yeah, I guess that's true too. But a hell of a nice guy. I mean, I had such a great time with him. And, of course, I admired him so much, you know, even at the time. And in 1995, you know, Dynamite, of course, he was nearing the end of his career. He was regarded by so many in the business as the greatest wrestler that ever lived. I'll have to say, I'll go on record saying that I believe Dynamite Kid was the greatest wrestler that ever lived. I think that due to the fact of he was an innovator, he took so many chances. In Japan, he was a legendary heel. You know, he'd punch a photographer, get arrested, so he would get more heat. And he knew that the promoter would do anything they could to get him out of jail because the fans, you know, wanted to see him because he had so much heat. They wanted to see the babyface beat the shit out of him, right. You know, from a real life incident. Dynamite Kid, what a guy! What an interesting career. He, you know, very. I would say. Bitter. Have you seen the shoot interview that he did?
I haven't. No, I've only seen a couple of shoot interviews, but I've heard rumblings of it, and it's good. I'm assuming you're going to tell me it's good.
Actually, I was going to tell you it's not good.
Okay, it's not good. Okay.
Sorry, I don't mean. I just
no,
call
but I
it
mean,
like I see it.
Sure.
Sorry, high spots. I'm sorry, but now taking into consideration that Tommy has been battling alcoholism for years, and and he's put a lot of other substances in his body. His mind doesn't operate as well as it used to. Okay, and he certainly physically, is a shadow of himself. But in my opinion, that documentary, there was a lot more that could have been done. There were so many more questions to ask, and it seems like they couldn't get an answer out of him. Which I really don't understand. I don't understand why they couldn't. But I'm not doing this interview to criticize.
No, man.
Poor high spots. You know what I mean? They tried. They really, really tried. And Tommy is a difficult guy. I can understand the interview, but I would have hoped they could have got more out of him than just yes or no answers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was a little disappointing to me.
So, I mean, you've done all this stuff in Europe and Germany and Greece and everywhere else. Now, you and I were talking, too. Now, New Japan, what was your involvement with New Japan? Was that before you started your own promotion, or was this...
Well, I've not directly connected with New Japan at all.
Okay.
What I am now, I work with Bruce Tharp, the president of the NWA.
Okay.
And Bruce is playing the role of a manager in New Japan. He's going there practically every month as a heel manager. A heel manager that happens to be the president of the NWA. The NWA has a relationship with New Japan Wrestling. And I myself, you could say I am unofficially, on the kayfabe, let's say, the advisor to the president. That's my position right now. And there's different things that we're working on that I really can't get into. Unfortunately, I can't talk about them publicly.
Perfectly fine.
I really can't. But, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the NWA is concerned, New Japan Pro Wrestling is without a doubt the greatest wrestling show right now on the face of the planet. I don't think that anybody could touch them. I think they promote wrestling in a legitimate fashion. Matches are believable. They leave the soap operas and the promos and all that. That's not important. What they do is what it says on the marquee. Wrestling. Mm-hmm. Now, there's talks about bringing New Japan Pro Wrestling here to the United States. There's talk about them being on television. As I'm sure that you heard, the Tokyo Dome show, January 4th, will be aired on pay-per-view. Jim Ross doing the commentary.
Yeah, with Jeff Jarrett's new promotion being in partnership or promoting in the U.S. form.
Now, see, New Japan works with, they'll work with just about any of the U.S. promotions. I mean, they work with Ring of Honor. They also work with Jarrett, and they also work with the NWA.
Anyway, you get the word out, I guess, and it works, and people are excited for it.
I'll tell you what. As far as I'm concerned, the only ones that could give WWE any type of, let's not say competition, because it wouldn't be, an alternative product to the WWE would be New Japan, because of how the show is presented. It's when you get down to it, it's old school wrestling, so the style of old school wrestling, but it's evolved. The in-ring style has evolved, but they've always kept it wrestling. You see, WWE, it's not important for them to make people believe. It's not important for them for people to have suspension of disbelief. the magic of what is the business. The reason why kayfabe ever existed was to protect the magic of the business. That's been lost. Vince McMahon has no desire for that. You know, it's about a television show. It's been that way for years, probably decades. I mean, to Vince McMahon is a television show, and boy, he's been really, really successful at it. He really, really has.
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis is not on the wrestling. The emphasis is not on, for example, back in the day, it was about rivalries would be created because of a championship belt. Because so-and-so, wrestler A interfered in wrestler B's match, so you have a match now between wrestler A and wrestler B. Okay, very, very simple, okay? But back in the day when there was emphasis put on the world title, when Tully Blanchard interfered on Ric Flair's behalf when he wrestled Dusty Rhodes, oh my God, that meant so much. But now stuff has been overdone. Now wrestling fans expect too much. My take on it is, why do promoters feel it's necessary to give the fans what they expect? I don't understand that. What you want to do in wrestling is that you want to give them what they don't expect. What you want to do is to surprise them. What you want to do is to introduce them to something new, something they never thought of before. I mean, I would think that that's, you know, is an important element of wrestling that's been missing. I mean, everybody's so shocked because of the finish they did at WrestleMania with Undertaker. Okay, well, let's see more of that. How do that pretty much that was happened by chance. I mean, so to speak. I mean, you know, I don't think that they expected that to have such a huge reaction as it did. Maybe they did. I don't know.
I was there live, and 70,000 people were just as shocked as I was, and I've been in wrestling, and I was shocked. So I mean, it works.
And if that was by design, why isn't that done more often? Not necessarily. Well, it doesn't have to be a loss, but other things. You know, why has wrestling become so predictable? You know, that's what I would like to know. It's very predictable. And if it's predictable, then why are you going to watch?
Right.
If the wrestling business doesn't have the intention of suspending the viewer's disbelief, then what's the point of all this? I don't understand it. Maybe I'm just too old school. I don't get it. Now, I do understand, you know, the business has changed. I do understand those things. But look at what happened at WrestleMania. Those people couldn't believe it. They were stunned. And you can still get people to believe. Unfortunately, WWE really isn't in that business. They're not interested. I think, for example, just for sake of conversation, if New Japan Pro Wrestling were able to get national television here in the U.S., essentially you saw the same product that you would in Japan, but it has an American twist to it. You know, you add interviews. You know, I think interviews are a big part, of course, of a wrestling show.
Right.
You can have some angles, but nothing over the top. Just simple things. Like I said, angles that are about a title instead of about somebody's girlfriend. Something that is reality-based, but reality-based when it pertains to an athletic competition. Do you follow me?
Yeah, I got you.
I really think that the wrestling business will be looked at in a different way if New Japan Wrestling was able to get on television here in the U.S. I think it would change the face and the impression of wrestling in the country. And let's see. I think that it's inevitable. And I think they're just starting with this pay-per-view on January 4th with Jim Ross. Now, I heard a rumor that CM Punk was going to be the co-host of the event. Now, his name wasn't announced yet, and it's just a rumor that I heard. But wow, I think they're testing the waters here in the U.S.
Well, let me ask you this then. This will be the last question I ask you here for part one. We'll wrap part one up. We'll do part two here later in the week. But for this, we talked about the internet and professional wrestling, and the internet is good for many reasons. Historically, we can look into the past, and that's something I want to touch on with you. But do you think the access to the internet and the fact that it's hard to keep a secret in pro wrestling nowadays is partially to blame for the reason that we don't get surprised as much in pro wrestling as we used to?
Yes. Yes, I think that has something to do with it, sure. Yeah. But the internet has hurt the wrestling business. Well, they used to say back in the day that like Meltzer's Observer newsletter was hurting the business too. You know, I think that nowadays, with what wrestling is perceived as a form of entertainment, wrestling fans have become more educated. They've heard about, let me see, a wrestling fan is a WWE fan. They've heard maybe about the matches with Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair. They check them out on the internet. Oh, wow, that was a great match. From there, they get interested in the legends. You know, like if they see, like if they're a WWE fan and they see the name Buddy Rogers, you know, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, the first Nature Boy, WWF World Champion. Well, they're going to check out the match. I think that it's educating fans. I think that that's what the WWE Network has done. That's been really beneficial for the business.
Awesome.
I don't think that was really their intention, but they've educated a lot of fans, and they are formulating opinions about what they want to see, what they would like to see more of. I mean, now there's really nothing that is inaccessible on the internet. Any match you want to see, you can just type it in. Whether it's Daily Motion or YouTube, you can find it. So, you know, if anybody wants to see an Ox Baker match, or they want to see a Buddy Rogers match or an Adrian Adonis match, all they got to do is just, you know, type it up, which is fantastic. Back in the day, we had to trade VHS tapes.
I was there. I had to do the same thing. Absolutely. To start out.
That was the only way that we could, you know, see a recent show or see matches of wrestlers that we were interested in. We had to get VHS tapes. So now it's more accessible. I think that we're going to go through pretty much, I think like a renaissance period with wrestling. I really do. That might sound a little highbrow to say that, but what I mean by that is maybe there is a chance. Maybe there is a chance for wrestling to come back. The wrestling is an art form, and you know nobody can deny that. If they deny it, they truly don't understand the business. It's an art form from the athleticism that takes place in the ring. It's an art form from a theater standpoint. It is heels and baby faces. And I think that we'll see a resurgence of I guess you would say, the primary elements of wrestling coming back. We see all these great indies out there. There are some guys out there really doing some good stuff, and they're really trying to put emphasis on wrestling. And, wow, the wrestling fans eat it up. They love it. And when there's a great match nowadays, the fans understand it. They respect it. And I think with more exposure, the business could turn around. The psychology could turn around, and I think more so than ever before, there is a need for an alternative product. TNA, recently, they had the best product that they've ever had.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a wrestling standpoint, it's really good. It has been crap for years with poor writers. And maybe they were great writers, but they were told to take a certain direction. I mean, that could be too. But overall, in my opinion, the television show was at sometimes not even watchable. But now TNA is a very watchable product. They're doing some great things, getting interest from rivalries between wrestlers. People want to see these matches. They want to see the Hardy Boys and the Dudleys, or Hardy Boys and the Young Bucks, or there are matches that are creating interest because going back to what I said before, that those primary elements I think are coming back. I hope they are. I really do, because you can only hope in this business. Renny, nothing is for sure, but hopefully a renaissance period. More and more people get interested in the overall business, the history of the business, and so on. Understand what wrestling truly, truly is, and gain a much more sophisticated appreciation for it. There you go. I just put that together, by the way.
Perfect. Put on a T-shirt.
Appreciation, no problem, of the business, and I think we're starting to see more and more in that. It's due to the internet. It's due to the WWE network. And let's see. The fans are going to want to see an alternative. TNA cannot be the only alternative on television. Well, you also have Ring of Honor, of course. But they're in minor markets. But just imagine if New Japan Wrestling was able to secure a national television slot. Isn't that a great way to end the first segment?
It would be interesting. Yeah, I mean, that would be. Obviously, they got Lucha Underground trying to do the same thing right now. Very small in viewership because the channel's not that available to a lot of people. Right. But yeah, I mean that might open some eyes because the style of wrestling in New Japan, like you said, it's wrestling and it's fun to watch.
One thing right now is that television stations they don't want to touch anything wrestling related. It's very tough. It's a tough sell. They're looking for reality shows. Well, if you can convince them that wrestling is the original reality show, I mean it really is. I mean, it's episodic TV. It's what built WTBS. What built Turner's Empire was wrestling on TBS for 2 hours on a Saturday night. So let's see what happens. I hope for the best for the wrestling business. I'm actually more positive about the wrestling business now than I have been in a real, real long time. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, and in part two, we're going to jump into some of the guys that you booked at Mid-American Wrestling who might be responsible for the renaissance of professional wrestling. In part two, we're going to talk about your track record in Mid-American Wrestling, which was an awesome promotion based out of Wisconsin in the Midwest. We're going to talk about some of the guys that you booked. Part two is going to be available Thursday this week, so make sure you tune back in on Thursday. Follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast, pencilpodcast.com. We'll be back with Carmine more on Thursday.
Hey everybody, you're listening to The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast hosted by me, Renny D and my friends. Each and every Tuesday we come at you with a new episode on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube, where we discuss the previous week's product on television, as well as the ins and outs of professional wrestling news and rumors. We'll also bring you exciting guests to bring you their perspective on professional wrestling. Follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.